Welcome back, everybody. Any questions about anything that's coming up? If you think of one while I'm doing other things, just type it in the chat. All right, I want to review the logical fallacy that we talked about last week on Monday when we were talking about the argument appeals. We also talked about bad arguments, arguments that if you look at them, the logic breaks down. It does not logically follow. So it's not a good argument to use, and those are called logical fallacies. Monday is the reading of chapter 12 in your subject and strategies book. So for Monday, read the argument chapter, subject and strategy. Okay. So the bad argument, and there are several types of them, and we're going to go over a lot more of them on Monday and on Wednesday, but the one they talked about in the video was called argument ad populum. It's also known as bandwagon. Anybody remember what the argument was? What is an argument ad populum or a bandwagon appeal? What's the argument based on? You'll need to be able to explain several of these for the final exam. Alexa, what do you think? Anybody want to help her out? Well, let's take a look at an example, and you can see if you can determine what argument they're using.
Ad populum is basically when you believe something and you believe something because everyone else believes it or a lot of people believe it.
That's the argument. You should believe it because many people believe it. Very good. So we looked at some examples. Let's look at one more. It's also, all of these arguments are also called propaganda. They're used to trick people into believing things that aren't necessarily true. Oh, hold on a sec.
Class, they see those cufflinks.
I look like our lawyer.
Exactly.
Why can't I just dress like them?
Them.
They look cool. Mom.
No, darling, I have this.
Mom.
Where did you get these looks?
Old Navy?
The Navy. It's the Navy.
Old Navy, Mom.
Could you turn around for us? May we see the back?
Mom, please.
Hunter, Hunter, Mommy's speaking.
Mom,
Hunter,
it's my first time.
Hunter, let Mommy handle this. And how much for the denims?
$8.
$8?
This shirt was $4.
Uh-huh. And you do know that children who lie go to prison, right, Hunter? And does there happen to be any sort of a sale?
Yeah, all kids stuff is up to 60% off.
You're going to be late today, Hunter. We're going to Old Navy.
So you can see their argument is only based on you should dress like everybody else. What happened to American individualism, right? Sometimes we do want to fit in, right? We want to lay low, blend in. When you get older, you tend to want to do that less. Maybe you want to do that less as a younger person. I should not discriminate, right? That's another hasty generalization or another logical fallacy. Okay, that means that you take and make a conclusion based on too little evidence. All right, so basically, maybe you've had bad driving experiences with 3 or 4 older drivers on the roads, and then you conclude based on that that all older drivers are bad drivers, right? You are guilty of a hasty generalization in that case because you have too small a sample size, right? You cannot, based on 3 or 4 experiences, generalize, hasty generalization, to an entire group of people. So that's another logical fallacy, and that's based on stereotypes. Okay. Now, there is actually evidence that shows some people, when people get older, we have more trouble driving. That's considered evidence, but you would have to look at like insurance statistic charts that look at a large group of people and what their accident rates are and things that consist of real logical logos evidence. You guys follow me? Doesn't mean the argument's wrong, just means you're using a bad argument or a bad way of supporting it. So that's the tricky part about logical fallacies, is they could be used to support things that are true. They're just not good arguments. Of course, they're also used to support things that are false. Okay. But a lot of stereotypes are based on hasty generalizations because we tend to take in a lot through the media, and whatever picture they present of a group is the one that tends to pervade, right? Even though it doesn't really represent that group. So things like blondes are dumb. You know, there's no proof of that. All Irish people drink. If you're Italian, you're in the mafia. You know, a lot of stereotypes are based on this, right? Just having too few examples. We're just trying to understand our world. It's natural, right? But you can't just take 2 or 3 examples and then sort of paint a whole group of people with that. Make sense? So this one, that is one that is also commonly used. Too few examples to make a really big conclusion that goes beyond the scope of the evidence. Today, I want to work on, excuse me, helping everybody come up with an outline to start the first draft of the research paper. Okay, so I want to look at an example of how you could go through, and then your guys are going to fill in your own, on your own topic, the sections that you're going to cover. So that makes sure that you cover everything that you need to cover in the paper. You have a blueprint. You have a design that will help you create the paper and start writing it. So let's look at the example here. So basically, you're going to follow this blueprint. You're going to write your thesis statement. You know, if you like the intro technique from your last paper, you might want to polish it. If you think you can do better, you should absolutely look at doing that. Okay. So you look at your intro technique, then brainstorm what background information that your audience needs to understand the issue, not just the history of it. If we don't need to know the ancient history of it, please do not include that. Only give us the current background information. Like if we were talking about the exploration of Mars yesterday. So what is the current status? Is there a program where they're, Janie, that they're actually pursuing colonizing Mars? Or are they just like doing preliminary exploration? I mean, okay, so that would be a good thing to let us know, because then that shows us if the argument matters. If we're already spending money to look into this, then the argument's even more relevant, right? So what are what's the current status of Mars? Are they just looking at the planet and sort of judging if it's, you know, a good candidate for colonization? Or are they actually planning things? Okay. So tell us what background information that we need to understand your issue. If you're going to talk about whether marijuana legalization has been good for the economy in a state, well, how long has it been legalized? What are the rules? How much is paid in taxes? You know, give us some basic information we need to understand it. Okay. And then if I asked you, okay, give me a reason that you think your side of the argument is true. So if you want to argue that marijuana legalization has been a significant addition to the economy of California, okay, then you have to basically give me a reason that you think that's true. What, they put a lot of money from it into education, or this is how much they've made, this is how much they're projected to make. So you come up with 3 basic reasons that it's true. Okay. Then you're going to start getting into, as you write the paper, what are pieces of evidence for each of those reasons? How can you support? So if you're going to tell me that California has really benefited and this is how much they got in tax dollars, what they do with those tax dollars? Okay. They're going to benefit in the future, and that's another reason. What are they planning to do with those tax dollars? How's it going to help them balance their budget, improve their economy? The other thing, and we're going to talk a lot more about this on Monday, is addressing the opposition for each argument. So you've looked at both sides in the last paper, so you know what your opposition is, and now you have to have answers. You can either say they're wrong and here's the evidence that proves it, or they have a point, but I have 3 more on my side. Okay. It does not hurt you to acknowledge the other side has a point. In fact, it helps your ethos to acknowledge that, because we're like, oh, they're reasonable. They're willing to admit the other side has a point. So they're arguing a reasonable fact. Now, if they don't have a point, don't do that. If they really are wrong, give us the evidence that shows that. Okay. And then remember the emotional appeal we were exploring yesterday? What are maybe 3 stories you can include for each point to connect your issue with real people? I don't know if you need 3, but at least 1 story. Okay. And then what conclusion technique? Remember the conclusion techniques we talked about? Suggest a course of action, speculate on the future. So let's walk through this example. Okay. So the research question, is the current FDA definition for organic sufficient to protect our food supply? Okay. You did your research, you examined the evidence, you came to a conclusion and decided the FDA should redefine the word organic as it applies to our food supply. Okay. So evidently you decided that the current definition is not cutting it. All right. So maybe your intro is a story about a farmer who grows organically but can't be labeled organic because there's a 4-year wait after applying fertilizer. So like if you have a farm that's used fertilizer, you have to wait 4 years before a crop can be planted and considered organic. So you have to look at the evidence. Does it mean that the fertilizer stays there? You know, why are they basing that long time period on it? Okay. So the background would be the current FDA definition of organic in the current standards. Okay. Point 1, the definition of organic is too strict in several ways. And then you provide evidence, expert opinions, maybe a research study or 2. Is there any opposition that says, no, it's just where it should be, then you have to acknowledge that opposition and explain why you think they're incorrect or why they may have some points, but it's still too strict. Okay. Then you do that with point 2 and point 3, same thing. Make your point, provide evidence, explain the evidence, address any opposition. Okay. And then conclusion, suggest a course of action for the FDA to follow. That's one of the techniques. The FDA should gather a bipartisan board of independent experts to recommend a new definition of organic. Questions? So this is what I'd like you to work on. Okay. You don't have to fill out points 2 and 3 right now, but try to get at least 1 point to show us, and then share this information in the chat so that we can kind of compare and help each other. So I'm going to put the instructions in the chat, and then I'll leave this example up, and I will also answer any questions that you have. So this is what I'm looking for yours to look like so far. Okay. Everybody understand what I'm looking for? So please start looking at your issue. And especially, a lot of times people will just give me the history of an issue instead of telling me what's currently going on. I asked for a current controversy. So I need to know, what is the current status of exploring Mars, or what is the current, tax rate for marijuana in California. Now, these can always change. This is just preliminary, so don't get too tense about choosing a thesis at this point. All right, type any questions you have in the chat as you're going along. Otherwise, start working on it. Remember, your thesis statement is the answer to your research question.
Wait, do you want us to put like a point that we have for ours in the chat right now?
Yes.
Okay.
So like I was saying, you don't have to have the reasons embedded or what, remember the essay map that we talked about for thesis statements where you have your main point and then you have several reasons that support it that map out what you'll talk about in your essay. So since Janie has her 3 reasons, she could put that, if you want, into the thesis statement. We should not colonize Mars because it may negatively affect human life on Earth. It is too expensive, and the negative effects of long-term space travel are too damaging. So then we know what she's going to talk about. She's got a nice outline for each section of her paper. She just has to go in and provide evidence to support each of those statements and address any opposition to them. Okay, it's looking good, guys. Some ones I've seen so far. The rough draft only has to be 5 pages. Of course, the more you get, the more I can help you with, because one of the things I'm going to do is look at your first draft and then conference with you about it to make suggestions. So we're looking about 5 pages for the first draft, then 6 to 7 for the second draft, and then 8 pages, 8 to 10 for the final.
Is this research paper going to be like the final, if you will?
There still will be a separate final exam, but this is basically a test of everything we've been talking about all semester long, how to write with different techniques like telling stories or description, how to do intros, conclusions, and what we're talking about lately with incorporating evidence, quotations, paraphrasing, all that good stuff. But we will have an essay final the week after we come back from Thanksgiving.
After Thanksgiving, we don't actually like have a class anymore, right?
That's right. The last official date that we meet will be this class actually, which I believe is, let me see, November 24th is the last time we'll meet on Zoom.
All right.
And then our final for this class will be on December 1st. If you need to check your finals, I posted a link to it on Brightspace on ENG280. I could do that for ENG280 also later today.
Yeah, that would be nice.
But I did post the final exam for ENG 111 and the link to the schedule for all the finals. So just to review, first draft, and remember, you can use a lot of the information. You just have to repurpose it to support your viewpoint. Yes, English 280 will have a different exam. It won't be as involved as the ENG 111 exam. Looking good. The first draft assignment, are you looking on ENG 111? Is there anybody else having trouble seeing the first draft assignment? It should say research paper first draft. Janie says she can see it. Okay, Emmeline, looking good. What is it? What is your answer to the research question? That'll be your thesis. So for example, do you think the benefits outweigh the drawbacks or vice versa?
I think I want to write it about how I'm for it, and then how I kind of want to also tie in like hybrid classes.